In the beginning, someone had just wanted to enjoy a calm and peaceful school life. A boy was quietly sitting at his desk while 3 girls stood chatting near the window. But that small wish quickly faded the moment he stepped into the classroom. His name was Akasaki Haruya, and he had always tried to live without drawing attention. That's exactly how he planned to spend his high school days, just blending in. As the school day started, one student reminded everyone to pass their homework notebooks forward. A few girls turned toward Akasaki and politely asked if they could collect his notebook too. Without saying much, he handed it over with a soft reply. The girl thanked him, then casually turned back to her friend and asked if she had watched TV last night. Her friend replied that she had. Akasaki thought to himself it had already been a month since he started high school, and by now he had fully settled into his role as someone who fades into the background. He figured no one really cared about who he was, especially not in a class that had the famous S-class beauty trio 3 girls who were impossible to ignore. Akasaki's thoughts drifted to Koenada Rin, the leader of the group, admired for her charm and adorable personality. Then he thought of Takamori Yuna, a stunning girl with sleek, jet black hair. Lastly, there was Himekawa Sarah, known for her graceful beauty that could easily capture any guy's attention. To Akasaki, Sarah felt like the ideal girl, elegant, kind, and almost too perfect to be real. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted when someone walked up to him. It was a boy, his classmate, who introduced himself as Kazumiya Yuki. Akasaki was a bit surprised. Yuki casually mentioned that he had noticed Akasaki looking at the S-class girls for a while and asked if he was close to any of them. Akasaki quickly shut that down, saying there was nothing going on. When Yuki pushed a little more, Akasaki replied with a straight face, saying he wasn't interested at all. Yuki just shrugged and joked that now he understood why Akasaki was always by himself. Akasaki let out a small, annoyed laugh, and Yuki walked off, throwing out one last piece of advice that he should try caring more about his classmates. As he watched Yuki leave, Akasaki thought to himself that the guy was like a whirlwind, messy, loud, and unpredictable. And someone like him, who preferred peace and quiet, had no business getting involved with girls like the S-class trio. Even if he tried, it would only bring problems, jealousy, and drama he didn't want to deal with. Since Akasaki had no plans to change who he was, he felt there was no reason for his path to ever cross with theirs. He didn't mind being alone at school, he already had something he looked forward to once the day was over. After class, he went straight home. Dropping his bag, he took off his blazer, loosened his tie, and removed his glasses. Standing in front of the mirror, he reminded himself how important it was to keep his secret hidden from his classmates. He always made sure to be careful. Looking at his reflection, a completely different version of him stared back, a strikingly good-looking guy. Once he was done getting ready, he opened the door, telling himself it was time to go. His secret. Every day after school, he went to buy shoujo manga. At the bookstore, he picked up a volume and chuckled quietly as he got pulled into the story. To him, spending time with manga felt way better than hanging out with people. This was what truly made him happy. As he stepped out of the shop, he recalled the last volume, where the female lead had been attacked by a thug and rescued just in time by the male protagonist. He had been dying to see what would happen next, especially how the hero would come to the rescue again in an epic way. Just then, a loud voice caught his attention. A man was talking to a girl, saying she had the looks to become a model. The girl politely turned him down, saying she was perfectly fine the way she was. From a short distance away, Akasaki watched everything unfold. He had a feeling the guy wasn't a real model scout, it looked more like some random man trying to hit on her. The girl was definitely cute, and something about her voice felt oddly familiar. But what really caught Akasaki's attention was how this whole scene felt like it had been lifted straight out of the shoujo manga he'd just been thinking about. When the girl started asking the man to leave her alone, Akasaki froze. He didn't know what to do. A big part of him wanted to just walk away and pretend he hadn't seen anything. He admitted to himself that he wasn't brave or confident enough to jump in. Then, all of a sudden, the man grabbed the girl's hand and she cried out. Akasaki took a deep breath. He thought, if I were the main character from that manga, what would I do right now? With that thought, he put on a serious face, stepped forward, and smacked the man's hand away. The guy winced and looked shocked, asking what Akasaki thought he was doing. Without backing down, Akasaki stood in front of the girl like a shield. Deep inside, he was terrified, his thoughts screaming about how scared he was, but on the outside, he kept his expression calm and firm. He looked the man in the eyes and told him he was way too old to act like some kid throwing a tantrum. The man clicked his tongue in frustration, muttered something about her already having a boyfriend, and then walked off. Akasaki stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do next. He quietly wondered if everything was okay now. Just as the girl began to thank him, he suddenly realized he was still holding her hand. His face turned red from embarrassment, and he quickly let go, mumbling an apology. Trying to keep it cool, he told her to get home safely. Then, without waiting for her reply, he blurted out, "Excuse me," and took off running. The girl didn't move right away. She gently touched the hand he had held, her cheeks glowing with a deep blush. That night, Akasaki was back home, lying face down on his bed, screaming into his pillow. He couldn't stop cringing over what had happened. Every little detail kept replaying in his mind, especially the cheesy line he had said. He couldn't believe those words had actually come out of his mouth. It was so unlike him. He was drowning in second-hand embarrassment and wished he could just disappear. But even through all that, one image stayed stuck in his head, the girl's face, and how warm her hand had felt in his. He found himself wondering if she had made it home safely. Later, on Monday at school, Akasaki was lost in his own thoughts, thinking about how awesome the latest volume of his favorite manga had been. That's when he overheard a lively conversation among his classmates. Rin was excitedly asking Sarah if it was true that a guy had helped her get rid of someone who was bothering her. Yuna tried to calm Rin down, but Rin just kept going, saying it sounded like something out of a movie. She even asked Yuna if she thought it was cool. Yuna gave a small nod, admitting that things like that did happen sometimes. As Akasaki listened, he thought to himself that Himekawa-san must often deal with people bothering her. She really seemed to attract that kind of attention. Sarah continued, saying the guy who had helped her could have just ignored everything like the others, but instead, he chose to step in and help. Akasaki quietly admired her for saying that he thought she was genuinely kind-hearted. Then Rin and Yuna excitedly asked if Sarah had gotten the guy's contact number. Sarah looked confused for a moment. Rin teased that the whole situation sounded like destiny, and Yuna agreed, saying it felt straight out of a shoujo manga. Sarah's eyes widened, and her cheeks turned bright red. She quickly said that he wasn't that type of person, and anyway, her family had already arranged someone for her. Rin, clearly disappointed, sighed and told her she was way too grown up. Akasaki, still listening silently, started thinking. He had helped a girl too, but he was sure the guy Sarah mentioned probably looked way cooler than he did. The more he compared himself to the mystery guy they were talking about, the more out of place he felt. It made him a little sad. Still, he couldn't help but admit the girl he helped was cute, just like Himekawa Sarah. But then he shook off the thought. Stuff like that only happened in manga. There's no way it could have been the same girl, right? Back then, Akasaki truly believed that the conversation he had overheard had nothing to do with him. Even though he had paid attention, it never crossed his mind that one day, he'd actually end up spending time with those girls. That kind of thought was completely out of the question for him at the time. As he walked down the street, his mind replayed what the S-class beauties had talked about that day. Something about it felt strangely familiar. Was it just in my head? He wondered. Just then, his phone buzzed. A message popped up. Haru-san, did you read the manga I recommended? It was from Nayu-san, the one person he could openly talk to about his love for shoujo manga. Akasaki knew he had to reply carefully. Soon, he arrived at a small cafe. "Excuse me," he said as he stepped in. A staff member looked up and told him to wait a moment, they'd show him to his seat shortly. As he stood there, Akasaki thought about how this cafe had become a part of his routine ever since high school started. He came here 3 times a week, and for someone living alone, it had slowly turned into his favorite spot. Then someone walked over to him. "Hi, Oniai-san," a cheerful voice called out. He turned and smiled. "Hello, Kohinata-san." She asked if he'd be having the usual today, and he nodded. "Yeah, I'll take the usual." She nodded and said, "Got it." As Akasaki watched her walk away, he couldn't help but think that the waitress, Kohinata-san, had the same vibe as the S-class beauties. In fact, she even looked a lot like Kohinata. Then, with a playful smile, she leaned in close and whispered in his ear that her break was about to start, so he should wait for her. Akasaki blushed, completely caught off guard. The Koenada-sen he knew didn't usually act this forward. It felt like she had no idea what personal space meant, and just like that, she dashed off. His phone buzzed again, snapping him back to reality. Right, he still hadn't replied to Nayu-san. He opened the message. Hello, I saw that you read it. Crap, she's mad now, Akasaki thought, panicking a little. He quickly typed a reply. Sorry, I got distracted. Oh, by the way, something funny happened at school today. Right then, his food was placed in front of him. Thanks for waiting, Koenada said cheerfully. Thank you very much, Akasaki replied politely. She blushed, told him to enjoy his meal, and then suddenly slipped back into her serious waitress mode. Akasaki blinked in confusion. What's with the sudden shift? He wondered. He asked if something was bothering her. With a smile, she replied, Nope, nothing at all. Looking at the food, Akasaki smiled back and said, Wow, it actually looks pretty tasty. Then enjoy, she said sweetly. But when he looked up again, there she was. Koenada was now sitting across from him like it was the most normal thing ever. His face froze. What are you doing? He asked. Smiling playfully, she simply said, This is just the usual. Akasaki sighed in defeat. All right, fine. She continued cheerfully. You know what kind of bond we share, don't you, Oniai-chan? Then with a big smile, she added, Oh, and guess what, Oniai-san? I have something to tell you. But before she could finish, Akasaki's phone buzzed again. Thinking it was a message from Nayu-san, he glanced down to check. Sure enough, she had written, What a coincidence. Something strange happened to me too. He quickly replied, Oh, what happened? Meanwhile, Koenada noticed he wasn't paying attention. Are you even listening to me? She asked. Still staring at his screen, Akasaki mumbled a distracted Annoyed, Koenada suddenly shouted, Someone tried to hit on me. Right at that moment, Nayu-san's next message popped up. Turns out someone tried to flirt with one of my friends. Akasaki simply responded with a short, HM. Koenada narrowed her eyes and asked if something was wrong or if the food didn't taste good. Coughing awkwardly, Akasaki replied, No, it's fine. Just like always. She blushed a little and softly said, Ah, as his mind spun from confusion, Akasaki recalled what the S-class girls had said the other day about being approached by strangers. He wondered, does this really happen that often? He'd only seen it happen for the first time yesterday. Looking at Koenada, he noticed her expression and thought maybe she felt like he didn't believe her. Blushing, she quickly admitted, Well, it was actually my friend who got hit on. To that, Akasaki flatly replied, I see, your friend, huh? In his mind, Akasaki thought that Koenada-san might seem ordinary to others, but to him, she was definitely cute, beautiful, even. Then his thoughts drifted to Nayu-san, whom he had met once during an offline meetup to talk about shoujo manga. He hadn't seen her face clearly because she wore sunglasses, but from what he could tell, she also seemed really pretty. And then there was the girl he had helped the day before, she was beautiful too, though he figured he'd probably never run into her again. That's when the thought hit him. Is my life starting to feel like a shoujo manga? All these pretty girls showing up around him, it was strange. Just as he got lost in thought, Koenada snapped him back to reality. Hey, are you even listening? She asked. Then, sighing, she added, I wanted to hear about your love life. Huh? Did you say something? He replied, clearly spaced out. It's nothing, she muttered, turning away. Akasaki reflected quietly, maybe for girls like Nayu-san and Koenada-san, getting hit on was just part of daily life. Right then, someone bumped into him. Sorry, a girl said quickly. But as she moved to walk away, she suddenly slipped. Akasaki reacted fast and caught her before she could fall. Are you okay? He asked. She looked up, surprised, and thanked him. But something in her voice made him freeze. Wait, what is this feeling? He thought, as her face became more familiar. Then she recognized him. You're that guy from before, aren't you? He scratched his head awkwardly. Yeah. Anyway, take care. Thinking to himself that if someone like him kept randomly showing up in her life, it would probably just weird her out, he quickly turned and began to walk away. But just as he was about to leave, she suddenly grabbed the sleeve of his shirt and asked him to wait. Blushing slightly, she said she wanted to thank him properly for what he had done. Akasaki, flustered, told her it really wasn't necessary. He figured maybe she just didn't want to feel like she owed him anything. With a small sigh and a mildly annoyed look, he gave in. "Alright, fine," he said. Her face instantly brightened as she grabbed his hand with a smile. "Thanks for saying yes. Okay, let's go," she said cheerfully. Still surprised, Akasaki tried to remind her again that she didn't have to go through all this. Later at the cafe, the girl smiled sweetly, her cheeks slightly red, and said she was honestly grateful for both that day and the one before. Akasaki smiled back and said it was really no big deal. He even joked that he got to enjoy some tasty cake, so it worked out for him too. She stood up with a grin and said the cake had turned out way better than she expected. Sometimes sweets were hit or miss, but this one was definitely a win. Then she laughed and mentioned how people often told her she didn't seem like the kind of person who disliked anything. She wondered aloud what that even meant. What does someone who doesn't dislike things even look like? Akasaki watched her curiously, surprised by how lively she became the moment they started talking about likes and dislikes. She suddenly apologized for talking too much, but Akasaki quickly reassured her. "Don't apologize," he said kindly. "Honestly, I think it's great when someone speaks their mind." She gently replied, agreeing with him. Akasaki immediately thought to himself, "Did I just say something wrong? This feels awkward." Trying to lighten the mood, the girl smiled and blushed, saying once again how thankful she was for that day. She added that she was really happy she got the chance to properly express her gratitude. "Well, that's all for today," she said with a small smile. Akasaki smiled back and said, "Ah, I see." Then, hesitating a little, he offered to walk her home only if she didn't mind. Of course. She looked surprised for a second, then quickly said it was fine and politely turned him down before walking away with a goodbye. As he watched her leave, Akasaki couldn't help but feel that she seemed a bit flustered. He wondered if she found him weird or creepy. "Maybe we're not as close as I thought," he told himself. With a disappointed look, he kept walking, thinking that he probably wouldn't see her again anyway. The scene shifted to the school the next day, where Rin was chatting excitedly with Sarah, saying it sounded like something straight out of Destiny. Yuna agreed, adding that she thought the whole thing was really sweet. Rin congratulated Sarah again, saying it was so nice that everything worked out for her. Smiling, Sarah nodded and said she was just glad she got the chance to thank the guy who helped her. Meanwhile, Akasaki overheard their conversation from nearby and thought to himself, so, Hankawa really did meet the person who saved her that day. Rin then playfully said that Sarah had been pretty bold for inviting the guy to eat with her. She laughed and wondered out loud who was better, her and Yuna's crush, or the one Sarah liked. Yuna chimed in, saying that the more she heard about this mystery guy, the more curious she got. She really wanted to meet him too. Blushing, Sarah quickly tried to clear things up. "It's not like I like him or anything," she insisted. "I just wanted to thank him properly, so I invited him to eat. That's all." Rin teased her again, saying, "You're seriously too cute right now." Sarah puffed out her cheeks and said it wasn't what they thought. But Rin just grinned and replied, "Even your pout is adorable." Yuna agreed and added, "Yeah, it's super cute." Sarah, now fully embarrassed, begged them to stop teasing her. Suddenly, Akasaki shot up from his seat. "Wait, hold on. Wait, no way," he thought, and without another word, he rushed out of the classroom. Sarah noticed him leaving. Outside, Akasaki's thoughts were spiraling. Everything those S-class girls were saying, it's starting to sound way too familiar. Still, he told himself he was probably just overthinking it. There was no way the guy Hankawa described was him. They had to be talking about someone cooler, someone completely different. His face was burning now, and he thought, "I've got to calm down." He realized he had probably just stormed out of the classroom without even thinking. But staying in there wasn't going to help either. As he stood by the door leading to the rooftop, Akasaki looked out at the sky and quietly said to himself, "What a beautiful view." He noticed the sunlight bouncing off his glasses, so he took them off and ran a hand through his hair to fix it a little. Just then, a voice nearby agreed, saying, "Yeah, it really is beautiful." He froze. That voice sounded strangely familiar. But no, there's no way, he thought. Still, he slowly turned around, and was completely shocked to see Hankawa Sarah standing there. She looked just as surprised as he felt. "Wow, what a coincidence," she said. Akasaki, caught totally off guard, awkwardly muttered a quiet, Then Sarah smiled and added, Looks like we really do go to the same school after all.